Hello, everyone. Welcome into Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. My name is Brandon Adams. This is Dog Nation's recruiting insider, Jeff Sintel. We'll talk to you over the course of the next 60 minutes about everything going on with UGA recruiting. A lot of that will involve the names still to know for Georgia, still out there for that 2020 class. We'll let Jeff Sintel address those in particular. We'll also get a chance to hear from five-star cornerback and UGA signee, and doesn't that sound good to be able to say, Keeley Ringo. That's coming up on today's show. But Jeff, in light of the fact that this weekend the Dogs are set to host a whole bunch of big names, I thought it might be appropriate off the top to kind of kick off our first look at the big names to know for Georgia in the class of 2021. Now, for a lot of these guys, we've talked about them intermittently from time to time, but maybe now kind of fixating on them, their moment in the sun. The 2020 cycle's almost over with. The February signing day has just been reduced to a shadow of what it used to be. A lot of the real action happens in December now. So it's almost time for the 2021s to take the full stage to themselves. And I guess this week we'll kind of begin that here on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger.
Yeah, folks, when Brandon Adams, of all people, the guy that's give me the 5 stars now, give me the players now, I want to talk about the guys coming in now. When Brandon Adams says it's time to start talking about the 2021s, that's kind of like the groundhog or the bulldog seeing its shadow or something here on our family of programs. And actually, we had this list that was ready to go last week, but then a certain thing called Jake Fromm happened, Cade Mays happened. You know, one of the busiest weeks of the last year on the Georgia beat definitely was a maelstrom of everything going on. And I think now with the junior day, because this isn't a weekend where Georgia's going to host a remaining major target in the 2020 class. This is the week where they're going to start sowing the seeds, start bringing in that relationship for the 2021 class. And mind you this, Keeley Ringo, his first infatuation and affection for Georgia came in the month of January on a visit for one of those junior days. And now you push that forward and you see what can kind of bloom out of those January junior day visits. Voila, you might just have the nation's #1 cornerback for the 2020 cycle. But with 2021's top targets, there's really 2 names at the top of the board.
So why don't we get ready to take a look at a lot of this stuff in the class of 2021 now. We're going to do this like we typically do with starting at the top. We're going to run through this in kind of top 10 fashion. Is that how we're going to do this here?
Brandon, this is going to be the list. From this list will be the one that we will top target all the way until February of 2021.
So let's keep that in mind right now and start at the top as we have with the name to know, and there are 2 of them for Georgia for the class of 2021. We'll do a 1A and a 1B here with 2 quarterbacks, Brock Vandagriff and Caleb Williams. So let's start right there for right now in terms of how Georgia will make the evaluation between Vandagriff, who's geographically closer, Williams, who is spectacular on video. You had a great interview with Williams going back to the All-Star season. How is Georgia picking between Vandagriff and Caleb Williams? And I guess as an addendum to that, the fact that Georgia has a slightly more dual-threat quarterback in Jamie Newman on campus right now, does that make things different with Vandagriff and Williams going forward as each of these guys get ready to eventually make their decisions?
Yeah, I think the main thing to think there is, Vandagriff just floats into the mix here as of January the 1st. Mm-hmm. That's when Vandagriff, he kind of told me that you can definitely look at it by his decommitment tweet from Oklahoma that it was just too far away, man. Too far away from grandma and grandpa, mom, dad, all the family, all the cousins to be able to come see him play. Oklahoma was just too far away. This was a Brock Vandagriff thing, not a Lincoln Riley, not an Oklahoma type thing. And with that, it probably brings only a couple of programs into the mix there for Brock Vandagriff. And up until that point, this is when we got to segue into Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams has been the guy for Georgia for forever in the 2021 class. But like a lot of things in recruiting, Brandon, it's complicated.
Yeah.
And I think probably a piece of good news happened for Georgia on the Caleb Williams front when Joe Brady is making the move now to Carolina. So folks got to wonder how much of that brilliance from Joe Burrow was inspired by the NFL play caller or the NFL passing game or the passing game coordination or the influence he had on longtime OC there, Steve Emsminger. And I think really just to crystallize it and boil it down here, Brandon, I think Georgia would love to have them both. I think Georgia is at the point now where the first one that wants to commit to the University of Georgia is going to get that spot.
Robert A. Smith kind of asked about that in our Facebook comment section. He says, if you can lock down Vandegrift, do you still wait on Williams? And I think different fans are going to have different answers, or different analysts may have different answers on that. So, Robert, all I can do is tell you my answer is, if Brock Vandegrift wants to commit to University of Georgia, I would accept that commitment. I would shake Caleb Williams' hands and say, you may be the best player in the country in a couple of years. I wish you well where you're going. I think that Georgia, just given the issues that it faces on offense and its need to rebuild its reputation offensively, I think it needs to take wins where it can get it. Vandegrift, to me, would be a huge win for Georgia. So if Georgia could get that commitment, I think you take it, and I think you wish Caleb Williams well. And I say that as someone who has been unbelievably impressed by the work that I've seen from Caleb Williams on video. But if I can get Vandegrift, I call that a big-time victory, and I move on and start thinking about other positions.
Well, these are still both five-star quarterbacks, and if you look at the composite, which I think it might flex a little bit in the near future for the 2021s, but Vandegrift's the highest-rated quarterback in the country. He's at number 1 pro style. He's number 9 overall. I think Caleb Williams is the number 1 dual threat. He's number 15 overall. And, you know, Caleb is a different sort. I think the way you look at that is he can launch the ball 60, 65 yards in the air, and he's going to run a 4.54 on the laser on the ground. Now, Brock Vandegrift is a really athletic dude in his own right. He's done some track, done some hurdles. He's the type of guy that would kind of look a little bit more in the style. Definitely not a apples-to-apples comparison here, because I don't think you can make that comparison with anybody anymore when it comes to Joe Burrow. But Vandegrift's a guy that's going to be more athletic than Fromm. He's going to be more athletic than Eason, more athletic than probably every Georgia quarterback going all the way back to DJ Shockley.
Okay.
I think he's even more athletic than Aaron Murray was. But what Brock Vandegrift's strengths are is throwing on the run, getting the ball out, making plays, quick reads, being very decisive. And this is just a major – I think timing comes into play here a lot, Brandon, with these two guys, because, number one, the only way I think Georgia can win the Caleb Williams race is what they show on the field.
Yeah.
Is what they show, hey, Jamie Newman, this could be you, the plug and play. The only way Georgia does that is by playing ball games with a different offense, a different approach, more weapons at receiver. And I don't think the timing is ever going to work out there for Georgia to do just that.
Yeah, Steve Burnett says he agrees that the commitment of Brock Vandegrift would be well worth taking. Craig Hill also asked about athleticism for Vandegrift, just given the fact that we did see Joe Burrow. You know, he's not Lamar Jackson, he's not Justin Fields, even at the college level, but he keeps plays alive, he can run. How does Vandegrift's athleticism compare to someone like that, what Trevor Lawrence has done for Clemson? I think Vandegrift is more of a pure pocket passer, but what kind of athleticism to keep plays alive does he have?
Yeah, I think Vandegrift's that type of guy, and gosh, I just want to be very careful with any Burrow comparisons, because I used to think that even Carson Beck was a good athletic parallel for buying time and making guys miss initially and to keep your eyes downfield and to make a play. But some of the plays that Joe Burrow has made against now Oklahoma and Georgia and now Clemson in the college football playoffs, they just astound me, man. And the way he would be able to get away from a Trayvon Walker and then increase the distance with a guy like Lewis Seen chasing him in that fateful play there in the SEC championship game. I want to say that maybe Vandegrift can give you like 70% of what Burrow has mobile athletically, and you're talking about a very good SEC starter right there. You're talking about an upper echelon SEC starter right now, and I think that's the thing. Vandegrift to me looks like a clear upper echelon SEC starter, especially right now, present day. But if Caleb maximizes his potential, he could be in the downtown athletic club guy.
So it'll be quite a debate that goes on with Georgia fans about this scenario. My guess is we're far from done on that. But let's see the rest of the top 5 for the class of 2021, where Georgia's heading with its next recruiting efforts. James Williams is a guy we've talked about before, one of those unique safety prospects in that he brings a lot of size to the table. He's a tall guy. A lot to like there. We know offensive line is going to be a big part of what Georgia needs to do in 2021. And Marius Mims, interesting that he gets the nod over other names as that top target from that category on our 21 list here. And then, of course, Barrett Carter, who very recently on social media has kind of given you a heads up that he might be, looking to commit at some point in time. And there won't be much of a tip-off when that might be happening. But all of these very interesting names.
Yeah, I spoke to Carter. First of all, Carter is a guy that I think he wants to do it definitely before his senior year. I think it's probably going to be, he's going to take a lot of visits, maybe sometime between May and August is, I think, what seems like a timeline for Barrett Carter. He's still got a little bit of ways to go down the road, but it's almost go time to start figuring things out there with Mr. Carter. Let's flash that list back up there real quickly. You'll be kind of curious to know that I would expect Vandegrift, Mims, and Carter all to be in Athens this weekend.
Very interesting.
Mims is a guy. Let's start with him since he's a higher rated guy. Marius told us on Dog Nation at the Under Armour All-American game week, had a couple of chances to talk to him, and it's the loss of Sam Pittman dropped Georgia down a tier, where Georgia was probably the leader, and it was Alabama and LSU chasing. Now I think that Georgia would be chasing Alabama and LSU. He told me about the visit this week that he wants to the main thing for him is to start building a relationship with Coach Matt Luke, kind of like the one he had with Coach Sam Pittman.
Yeah, if Pittman were still here, is there a chance that Mims would have already committed?
I don't think so, but I think it was going to be an eventuality, and I think he probably would even admit that eventually Georgia and Pittman was probably going to get him down the road. But, you see guys like this coming through, and it's the same thing. He's a little bit more raw than an Andrew Thomas and even a Broderick Jones coming out. But reminder, this was just his first year of playing a tackle at the high school level. His sophomore year, he was actually a tight end for most of shows you a little bit about his athleticism. But he's about 6'7.5", about 320. Going to be a little bit taller than Andrew, a little bit taller than Broderick Jones. So Mims is a guy that, he's a 5-star. I think he's the number 3 tackle in the country. Definitely a priority for Georgia in the 2021 cycle, because really Georgia, we talk about Kroger and the click list and doing all your shopping at home and then pulling into that lane. Well, if Matt Luke would be a heck of a recruiter, heck of a windfall recruiter in his first year, if he could just stay in the Peach State, fill up the basket there with an Amarius Mims, a Terrence Ferguson, and a Micah Morris.
Yeah.
Call itself a core of an O-line class, because those are 3 definite big-time targets for Georgia in the 2021 cycle.
Those are the top 5 names to know for the class of 2021 for Georgia here on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. How about the rest of the top 10? Let's get ready to check in on some of that now. Will Shipley, a running back out of North Carolina, a guy who, you talk about an interesting skill set. Certainly Shipley brings that to the table. My guess is, in conversations you and I have together, there'll be a lot of talk about Shipley coming up soon.
Yeah, so Shipley, there's a story that I've been waiting to write on dognation.com. It seems like the news cycles just keep swallowing me up here with a lot of things. But Shipley took a visit to Georgia for the A&M game, I believe, and he loved it. And I've spoken to him recently, and he said that, that good juju that you have off a visit, you're supposed to love it. But then since that visit, the feeling marinates, that something there is lasting between him and Georgia. It's got a complicated recruiting story. There's a lot of NC State, a lot of Notre Dame there to think about there as well. But he's a guy that Georgia has started talking to a lot in the 2021 cycle, especially after he took that visit to check out the program in late November.
Yeah, so no doubt about that. Next name to know, top target after Will Shipley, name number 7, Isaiah Johnson, the cornerback out of West Virginia. Corey Foreman, a defensive end out of California. Some of these big names from kind of out of state in terms of big defensive prospects Georgia will be paying close attention to.
Yeah, the thing there is, I think Georgia really needs to go hard in the paint on the defensive side of the ball in the 2021 class. They've certainly done that so far in the 2020 class with the offensive side of the ball. But with those names right there, let me pop up a few. Isaiah Johnson, the 5-star corner out of West Virginia. He's actually an Atlanta native. Grew up in Atlanta, so it means a lot for him to be recruited by the home state school. He visited Georgia this year during the season, and he's coming back for Junior Day this weekend. So there's a lot of early boxes there that are checking in terms of Georgia's going to definitely have more than a puncher's chance. Rolling through it, Corey Foreman, man, seems like a lot of Clemson and then LSU on the mind there of Corey Foreman right now in terms of the schools that are definitely in it. I think Georgia's in one of those top 4, top 5 positions right there for Corey Foreman.
And for what it's worth, Christopher White, watching some Facebook, says he thinks that Foreman needs to be higher on the list.
He definitely needs to be higher. If we were going on pure, these are the players Georgia could, spiffy up a defense and really end up with some NFL first-rounders out of that. You could cherry pick a lot of names and move them up closer to the top. But Foreman's a guy that you want to see him visit Georgia. He visited Clemson before the season last year, and man, the thought of him eventually lining up on the same side of the ball with Brian Brzee, that'd be game over, man. I don't care who you had out there on that side of the line. You better have the best of the best on that side. You better have an Andrew Thomas. You probably need to have a Broderick Jones playing guard, both of those two guys, to try and block those two guys, but especially consistently for 4 quarters. The other names on the list, you see Micah Morris. He's actually visiting South Carolina this weekend.
Interesting.
He's out of Camden County. Lavoisier Carroll's probably got his top 5, probably already knows the 5 schools that are going to get his official visits. Lavoisier, who's out of Warrenton, Georgia, who moved to IMG Academy to play his high school football from instead of single A Warren County. Lavoisier, I think, knows his 5. I think he's going to take his official visits to those 5 in the spring, and he's going to just clap his hands and probably be done, I would imagine, by June in terms of his decision. That's one of the elite running backs in the country as well.
Tom Lavelle watching on Facebook, when you see names like Amarius Mims, Micah Morris, we know that Matt Luke's good about creating relationships because we've seen that with our own eyes. But in terms of being a closer for these signatures, the way that Sam Pittman proved to be, what kind of closer you think that Luke's going to be with guys like Mims and Morris? That's what Tom Lavelle wants to know.
So I want to give you guys this information. I might drop it in the forum first, or I might put it in an upcoming Amarius Mims story. But I think that what made Pittman so effective, besides he's a heck of a nice guy, he's a genuine personality, he's going to make you laugh, he's going to be fun to have a round of golf with, or fun to just sit in a coach's office and spin a yarn with. But the thing that made Pittman so effective for Georgia on the recruiting trail was that he had to recruit to Georgia, which is all the facilities in the world, the pro potential, the great 5-star players around you. You would be close to the Atlanta area. You had a great degree. Every facilities box was checked. There was some championship pedigree there with Kirby Smart coming out of the Alabama coaching tree under Nick Saban. So you could look at Pittman, and he wasn't a ascending coach. He wasn't a guy that you were sitting there going to go and say he's only going to spend a couple years there at Georgia. They knew that more than likely, unless an Arkansas job came open, he would still be the offensive line coach at Georgia. He had no aspirations to be a head coach, no aspirations to be a coordinator. So you had all those things, and Pittman was the guy that was not trending upward in his career as well. But then just look across the SEC. Auburn just replaced its offensive line coach again. I think that's the 2nd or 3rd time they've replaced their offensive line coach since Pittman came on board with Kirby Smart. You look at South Carolina, their offensive line coach is, I think, only 2 years old. Same thing for Tennessee. The same thing for now Arkansas has a new offensive line coach.
To be clear, the coach has only been there for 2 years, not actually 2 years old. That'd be quite a story.
Yeah, but you have a lot of guys that are just into their 2nd year.
Right.
You look at Florida, Dan Mullen. There's not a lot of guys that you could have looked around and say, hey, that dude's been there 4 years.
That's right.
And he's likely to be there for 4 more.
That's right.
I think you combine all that stuff in with Pittman. That's what made him so special.
One more topic on this, and then I want to get a chance to hear a great interview you did with Keeley Ringo, the recent UGA signee. How do this year's top running back names to know, guys like Lavoisier Carroll and guys like Will Shipley, how do they compare with what was out there for 2020? It certainly seems like right now that maybe Georgia may settle for one elite back when there was a thought for a while that the Georgia might get a chance to go out for a second. Maybe now kind of shifting some of that to the class of 2021. How do guys like Carroll and Shipley compare to the Evanses and the Tank Bigsbys and that just general crop of backs that were available in 2020? Well,
let me start off with the first question for you, Brandon. If Georgia, whoever they pick at running back, if they pick 2 by July, are you going to be quite happy with that?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously I would have liked to have seen Georgia do the work of fully filling out its running back roster here in this 2020 class, but I do think by the virtue of how all this plays out, it does put more importance on that class of 2021, I think.
So to answer your question, I think Shipley is a guy that I would put in that elite. I think Will Shipley out of North Carolina would have been a top 3 running back in this year's class. Mm-hmm. I think he's that good. Everybody remembers those short shuttle words, those short shuttle times that we threw out there about Zach Evans. Can I say that now? Is it time?
No, yeah, it's fine.
Is that a name that shall not be named on your program?
No, not at all.
If we went through that too soon moments. But
no, I've never felt that way.
So Zach Evans, he ran the 3.83. Well, Will Shipley's running a 3.95, 3.93 already as a high school junior. He's got some of those elite, cat quick type times. I think he's a 3-down running back to me. He's a guy that I would put up there in that as a top 5 running back in any class year, in any class cycle. the common comparison everybody makes with Will Shipley is he's another Christian McCaffrey. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to try and make sure I said 6 things about Will Shipley before I went to the automatic thing, which is what every recruiting analyst tries to say within the first 30 seconds as they start breaking down Will Shipley. I think, by and large, Brandon, I'm just going to kind of be very open and very honest. There's not a lot of names here in the 2021 class, even nationally, that make you go like, whoa. Goodness, this is a special young man, a special player. I think Brzee was a guy at this age, at this stage. I think Julian Fleming was a guy. Noah Sewell was a guy. You keep going down the list, Broderick Jones, Mikhail Sherman. There's a lot of names, Keeley Ringo, that I don't know if I have 15 names out of the 2021 class that just seem as brilliant right out of the gate as a clear 5-star impact starter in college football. I think Corey Foreman's definitely one of those names, but there's a lot of guys that just have the potential to get there. I mean, you can keep going down the wide receivers list. Jackson Smith-Nagaba, Damon Demas out of Texas A&M. There's a lot of guys that you just look at them, and even after their junior years, and they're like, that is just a special football player. Miles Murphy is a name. Yeah. Remember that name. A lot of guys that you just go, wow, that guy's going to be special. Eric Gilbert. I don't think there's a lot of Eric Gilberts out there in the 2021 class, especially at a lot of all these positions.
So we will have some time to discover who those diamonds in the rough might be for the class of 2021. We'll look forward to doing that with you here on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. Speaking of Kroger, Valentine's Day is just a few weeks away, and Kroger's got a great start for you for your shopping, whether it be cute little Valentine's squishmallow in assorted styles and sizes, starting today, and you can download on the Kroger.com or Kroger app and then redeem in stores Friday and Saturday. So a great chance to save there at Kroger. Make sure you check that out. Coupon today, saving this weekend. Stop by the Kroger store close to you and check that out, or see Kroger.com or the Kroger app for more details on that. All right, still some hay to be put in the barn for Georgia in the class of 2020. We've got that coming up in just a few minutes here on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. Before that, a really fun conversation Jeff Sintel was able to have with Keeley Ringo in San Antonio, Texas, where Ringo announced his decision that he'd signed with the Georgia Bulldogs, one of the most important gets for Georgia in its 2020 class, and someone who had some real strong things to say about his UGA relationship. This is Good with Jeff. Hope you enjoy it with Keeley Ringo as a part of Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger.
Was it ever like a football game? Did Georgia come from behind? Was Georgia up by 20 at halftime? What was it like for you? Can you break that down for us?
Honestly, early in my recruitment process, I was taking a lot of visits to Texas. I was a high-end Texas recruit, but just taking my visits, it most definitely made me look around more and not fall into my first visit in my first love for the recruitment process.
At what point did Georgia become real for you, where you're like, this could be the place?
Yes, sir. Probably my second or third visit when I was up there, yes, sir. Kirby Smart's a great coach. He works with DBs consistently, man. Even at Alabama, a lot of DBs such as Mika Fitzpatrick and a few others came out. So most definitely, he's a great DB coach, and he knows what he wants to do with the program, and I could get developed by him.
Were you leaning Georgia by the time G-Day came around? Remember that visit?
Not yet, honestly, but I feel like almost a month ago, I feel like Georgia could most definitely be the place I'm going to go to.
How'd you feel about Georgia at the cookout? That was the slip and slide and everything. Was that the point where you were like, maybe?
Yes, sir. Most definitely, yes, sir. It was a great place, man. A lot of fun. You're really able to see the personality of your coaches and just the way that they move. And I like it a lot, man. They know when to be serious, and they also know when to have fun, most definitely.
Keeley, who are you close to in this class that made you think like, because a lot of maybe one of the major attractions is who you play with, and you want to play with dogs because I know you want to win. Who are the guys in this class that maybe steered you or were positives for Georgia?
Kendall Milton, no question. I was talking to him consistently on my visits also. We went on several visits together. Just to vibe with each other. That's my guy, man, and I feel like I could see myself going to school with him. We're actually going to end up rooming together.
You're going to room together?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But you don't get there till May, right?
No, sir. Yes, sir.
What was the reaction from coaches when they knew you were coming?
Oh, they were super excited, like any other coach would be, honestly. Just jumping out the seat, and they're really excited to help me get developed, so yeah.
Keeley, I think you need a maybe 5 stars in illusion for this week. Did you try to put on smoke screens or whatever for everybody, or was it just the way it happened?
It was just the way that happened. Honestly, I just like to enjoy the process, and everybody thought I was going to different schools because of the clothes I was wearing. Man, I just like to wear my attire that I get. It's nice stuff. So yeah.
What's your relationship like with Jalen Kimber and
Yes,
getting
sir.
to play with him?
Yes, sir. Jalen Kimber is a great guy also. I went on 2 visits with him. We had a great relationship, man. We're in DB room with Coach Warren too. He's a great player. I was able to see him out here as well throughout the week, man. He's most definitely going to be able to impact the program as well.
Keeley, was there a point where you made a silent commitment to Georgia? Did you ever let the coaches know you were coming and then they had to wait all these months, or how did that go?
I told Coach Kirby Smart that I could most definitely see myself coming here, and my top 3 schools are going to be end up being Oregon, Georgia, and Texas. So we went with that, and then the recruiting process got more real. So
Who finished second?
sir, Oregon.
How close was it? Can you describe how the decision was where maybe Georgia outkicked, like a track race, outkicked Oregon?
After Georgia was really smart on getting me on the visit right before signing day. It felt like it was a really great fit for me, man, and me just trusting the process, man. Georgia was just a place for me, honestly, me personally, man. I feel like that gut feeling was really the thing for me, so I feel like I didn't want to go against that.
You told me 2 or 3 days ago that it was on you because this is your life. You've got to live it. You've got to bleed on the practice field. What sort of family input? Did they match what you were feeling, and did most of your family think, we think you should be at all?
Yes, sir. Most definitely. My dad is actually, my dad's part of the family. He's from Atlanta, Georgia. So most definitely, they were thinking that they want me to be a dog. My mom also likes she likes the South as well too. So
I think everybody knows your mom because she's active on social media,
Yes,
or
sir.
because of the snake picture or whatever. Tell me about your dad. Like, I don't know if a lot of people know that guy.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It sounds like he's still a big part of your life.
Yes, sir.
Can you
Yes,
tell
sir.
me what sort of impact he's made on you?
Yes, sir. My dad's a huge inspiration to me, man. He's actually in the Navy. He's a Master Chief, and throughout my entire life, man, he hasn't always been able to be there, man. But I love the guy, man, and he's been a great person to me, most definitely. So,
He's a
yeah.
Master Chief.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Does he live in Atlanta, you said? Or
He lives in Virginia, actually. He's based in Virginia, but all of them are from Atlanta.
how many family members do you have in Atlanta?
I couldn't even count.
50? 20?
For like 15, probably like that. Yes, sir.
How do you feel? You know, iron sharpens iron. I hear
Yes,
that
sir.
a lot.
Yes, sir.
There's lots of good DBs that you're going to have to deal with, but now Georgia's getting a lot of good receivers. How do you feel about Georgia now bringing guys like Jermaine Burton, George Pickens, Arian Smith, who's probably even faster than you?
Yes, sir. He is actually. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
How do
sir.
you feel about that end of it?
It's really great, man. I like to compete, man. As I was saying here as well, everybody here is All-American, and those are really great players too, man. So I'm looking forward to really compete and just get developed as well too, and just get better off those guys.
What do you hope people that saw you play for the first time here?
Yes, sir.
What do you hope they picked up about you and the way you go about your craft?
Oh man, I'm physical, man. I just stay true to my game and stay true to my technique. That's really it.
Is there any Georgia fans that reached out to you today, like at the game? Did anybody say anything to you that you'll remember? Any fans that say, great to be at, I mean, you had those people hovering over
Yes,
you.
sir. Yes, sir. It's just a huge honor to make people's day. Man, just like a simple thing like a high five, man, or a small signature or a picture really brightens me up just to see the smiles I can put on people's faces. So yeah.
Richard LeCounte came back today.
Yes, sir.
He said he's coming back for
Yes,
sports.
sir. I see on Twitter.
Georgia gets Keeley Ringo signed, sealed, and now public. Did you know Richie at all, or what's it
Yes, sir.
like
Yes, sir.
What was it? How does Richie help Georgia? I mean, was he a factor in your recruiting at all?
Yes, sir. I've talked with Richard a few times throughout my visits. He's a DB, man. He's really great, man. Coverage skills, really great, man. His ultimate pitch was just to get me on campus and just see how I feel, man. And he's not gonna really push me too hard. He's just saying wherever my gut feeling is, then take that.
I'll end the question with Kendall.
Yes, sir.
Can you just break down how much he loves Georgia and how much of a factor he was for you?
Yes, sir. Him being a West Coast dude as well, our personalities match pretty well, man. Really goofy guy, man. I could see myself living with him. He's a baller, man. We both have the same goal, and that's to go to Georgia, man, and just be successful.
All right, guys, that's Keeley Ringo, another 5-star for Georgia's class. I think this is the 12th time that Kirby Smart has signed a #1 player from another state, and also his 10th time signing a #1 overall player at his position. Keeley Ringo, really polite young man, really well raised, great manners. Thanks for taking some time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, I just love opportunities to get a chance to hear from Keeley Ringo. Obviously, he's a very good player, really exciting prospect, but also someone that I think really brings a lot of energy to the Georgia program. Seemingly had strong affection for UGA throughout the entirety of the recruiting process. I know a lot of UGA fans look at on the Ringo thing and think, boy, I wish they could all be this way. A guy who shows up on campus, takes a lot of visits, says a lot of nice things about Georgia, then ultimately follows through with that with a letter of intent. A guy that I think can really compete for some early playing time in Georgia in 2020. Ringo, I think, is got a real bright future as a football player, but someone I believe that UGA fans are going to really enjoy.
So there's the thinking now that they're going to Keeley Ringo and Kendall Milton are going to room together. That's the plan. You want to talk about two hand-in-hand or side-by-side ambassadors for Georgia, just how well they speak. I think one of our, shout out to one of our Dog Nation forum members. The preview video we did with Keeley Ringo from Texas before he announced his decision, I think that one went about 6 or 7 minutes as well. And he said, someone told me, I think they counted 44 yes sirs, some, dozens and dozens of yes sirs into that. And then you see, Keeley Ringo talking right there, and he is an example of a young man that was raised well, raised the right way. Kind of one of the guys that make you feel old a little bit when you talk to him and they yes sir you that much. But with Keeley, I'm just going to cut to the real, Brandon. I'm so much higher on what he can give Georgia immediately at the cornerback position than even what Tyson Campbell was ready to give Georgia as a true freshman, another true freshman 5-star cornerback in 2018. This is an advanced football player, and you saw the recent story we had on Dog Nation where we wrote about him as a unicorn, and the fact there was like, could Georgia move him to safety, or would he remain at corner? And a lot of the supporting information in that post was, this is one of those special young men that you can play wherever he wants.
Yeah, boy, that's a fun thing to think about. A lot of bright days ahead for Keeley Ringo. We're looking forward to covering that for you here on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. Speaking of Kroger, they've got you covered for family fun night to enjoy the start of the new year, the cozy night in. Last night really foggy. Nobody wants to be outside, indoors. Great chance to do that. Play some board games with your kids. Games like Sorry and Jenga, now 25% off. I was telling the audience the other day, I love Jenga. I always try to get my kids to play Jenga. They like Sorry pretty well. Jenga, though, is to me one of the great games. One of the great games.
You played the big Jenga yet with the big
I haven't
blocks?
done the big one, but I have seen it before, though.
So Jenga, we've done something in our household with the Jenga, and we have, I'm not trying to make this like a college party story or anything like that, but we have little sayings written on our Jenga pieces. Like when you pull the Jenga piece out, there's something you have to do, whether it's quack like a duck or, eat an ice cream cone or something like that. We're playing a lot of Battleship these days.
Battleship phone as well.
My old school Battleship where you don't have to press the buzzer and everything else like that. My daughter Hannah, all 13 years of age, she is killing me lately in Battleship.
So 25% off certain games there at Kroger. How about 25% off classic children's books as well? And when you buy select movies like Lorax or Maleficent, you can also get a free bag of Twizzlers or a 3-count Pop Secret to enjoy some while you watch the movies there at home. That is fun stuff. Kroger taking care of you for family night indoors here during this winter season. Keep that in mind. Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. All right, in a moment, we're going to take a look at the top targets for the class of 2020, those that are still out there. However, a little bit of a clerical error on my part. And to be fair, it's been a while since we've done a classic full-blown top targets list, just given the fact that the 2020 names have been whittled down so much, and there's been weird things going on the last couple of weeks with the Fromm announcement last week, bowl game prior to that, and everything else. I actually didn't do one of my important duties. I'm supposed to, after we show our top targets, sometimes Jeff will have, we kind of jokingly call it like the Clark County phone book or something along those lines, another long list of names that almost received consideration for top 10 top target status. So for the class of 2021, here are the names that just missed out on making that list a little earlier in our show. And invariably, somebody will see this and think this is the list and say, well, where is so-and-so on the list? Why are we not talking about Brock Vandegrift or Caleb Williams? Those names all came earlier, but here are the names that just missed out on the top targets list. Our first one for the class of 2021. Let me show you the list here. And Jeff, I'll actually let you take this and kind of take us through some of these names, because while some of these are, fairly familiar for me, other of these are maybe not quite so much. So I'll let you kind of just take this where you want to go.
So everybody likes a Peach State running back. Cody Brown wants to be a sports broadcaster, has a 4.0 GPA, ran through some very salty 7A higher classification defenses in the Georgia High School State playoffs. Big back out of Parkview. Savion Byrd, Brandon, out of Duncanville, Texas. Now, oddly, that's the same place where Enos Rakestraw is coming out of right there. But Savion Byrd, get this. He told us, Connor and I, at the Under Armour Week for the Future 50, that this is the nation's number 2 tackle in the country, higher rated than even Amarius Mims. And he's like, I'm from Atlanta. I love my family in Atlanta. We moved out of Atlanta. He's like, I love Georgia. Georgia's probably in my top 5. Georgia's going to get an official visit, but I wish they would recruit me harder.
Wow.
You don't hear these things out of the number 2 overall tackle in the country.
It's
I think
very
he's
interesting.
Number 11, number 12. Savion Byrd is going to give Georgia an official at a Duncanville. Other names on this list as we kind of roll through the Clark County phone book. Isaiah Brevard, that's somebody Caleb Williams told me he had the most of a connection or of a rapport with at the Future 50 workouts. He's out of Mississippi. Brandon, he actually told me that he's a top 75 receiver in the country. He actually said at the Under Armour Future 50 Media Day that Georgia was his number 1 school. Terrence Ferguson spoke to him at Under Armour as well. Terrence doesn't think that the move from Sam Pittman to Matt Luke is a major change agent for his decision. He said helped him grow up a little bit and realize that you can't put all your stock in a school just with one coach. Ajayi Hall is a guy that's favored Georgia for quite some time. He's the nation's number 1 receiver, I believe, for the 2021 class. Shmuel Mondon out of Paulding County in Dallas, Georgia, rated higher than Barrett Carter, but he's an inside linebacker also out of the state of Georgia. Evan Pryor out of Cornelius, North Carolina. Those North Carolina running backs for the University of Georgia. We already mentioned Will Shipley. Pryor has had Georgia as a top 5-ish type school for the longest time. He's been working about a year ahead with his recruiting, checking out these schools. He's visited Georgia many times. Kamar Wheaton is currently the number 1 running back in the country out of Texas. Been favoring Georgia for quite some time. Never taken a visit out to Georgia yet, though. And then with the receivers talk right there, I don't think Georgia's going to get 4 or 5 receivers anymore in this class, but I think they're going to go for 1 or 2 really elite names. Jaden Thomas is out of Pace Academy in Atlanta, Georgia.
A guy that's starting some work with our buddy Terrence Edwards, so really good stuff there. And Donnie Keene did ask about where's Morris and where's Mims. All those names are on our top 10 list for our top targets of the class of 2021, which you can see in its entirety from the very beginning of the show. So sorry about the clerical error there. Those are the names that just missed out on the top 10, but the top 10 was unveiled for the first time, by the way, early in our program. It's Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. That's Jeff Sintel, our Dog Nation recruiting insider. My name is Brandon Adams. With all of that in mind, that's where things stand for Georgia with its class of 2021 recruiting efforts. Big junior day coming up this weekend. A lot of those guys on campus. We'll look forward to reading a lot from Jeff about that at the forum at forum.dognation.com and on dognation.com. But still some work left to be done for the class of 2020, whether it's holding on to some commitments that Georgia still possesses or maybe looking to fill out a couple of remaining scholarship spots with some, in some cases, new names on the board. Jeff, let's turn things loose here and talk about those remaining targets for the class of 2020 and how Georgia may look to fill its remaining scholarship spots.
Yeah, certainly. You got to start with guys that are going to give Georgia an official visit that kind of have Georgia in that top 3, top 4 type lane, winding down here. And one thing to think about, Brandon, Jamie Newman, who's on campus this week at Georgia, you can't really, since he's eligible this spring and participating this spring, don't think you can count him in the 2021 class, whereas you can a guy like Trey McKitty, who would follow the Eli Wolf and who would follow the Eli Wolf and Lawrence Cager pattern from the 2019 season. But, you know, there's 21 commitments. There's 19 signees, and now there's 2 incoming grad transfers. You also have a straight-up transfer, which would be Austin Kirksey, another name for the quarterback room at the University of Georgia, who played with Dominic Blaylock at Marietta, who spent a year at Nevada, now coming back home. But the remaining list, I don't think there's any more than 3 names, Brandon, that could populate the remainder of Georgia's class. And that's not including Cedric Von Prawn, and that's not including Broderick Jones.
So we won't see their names on this list?
You won't see their names on this list because those are guys, I feel, that they're not a target. They're a commitment. And I'm not in the business of worrying anybody or scaring up any hopes for clicks or anything, but I still think both of those young men do end up at the University of Georgia. So when you look at the guys that are left, I see a definite need right off the jump with Enos Rakestraw Jr. I wrote about him earlier this week, I think, or sometime over the weekend on dognation.com. Brandon, he was a guy that had 0 Power 5 offers before the start of his senior year. Brandon, he then went and held Rakeem Jarrett to 4 catches, 32 yards. Jackson Smith-Nagaba, he held him to 5 catches for 37 yards. This is a guy that was getting 11 catches for 150 yards a game. He held another highly regarded 2021 receiver to 2 receiving yards. And the proof was in the pudding. He put the film out, and now he's got Missouri's going to get an official visit this week. then Alabama's going to get one on the 24th. He's going to try and squeeze in an official to another school during the middle of the week. Perhaps that's to a Texas school. But the last official visit, January the 31st, is going to go to the University of Georgia. 6'2", about 175. Looks like a pure corner to me, just going to have a lot of length. I would expect his name, even though he's rated, I think, is the number 85 corner in the country right now, that's going to shoot up over the final recruiting evaluations, where I'm certain that he will wind up a clear 4-star in the country.
So in addition to, it sounds like some really good work during the All-Star season, was this a really big senior year? Smart's spoken before about wanting to make those evaluations more for players during their senior year. What else beyond just the All-Star performances is something that got folks' attention, Georgia included, when it comes to Rakestraw? Big performance in his final high school season?
Yeah, well, that was totally it, Brandon. I mean, Rakestraw was so off the radar. He didn't get those invitations to the All-American camps. He did all those things against all those 5-stars I was talking about during the regular season.
Fair enough.
In Texas. And he's a guy that you look at him, and that's truly on the bulk of this senior year. He has the length. He has 4.4 speed. Look at him come up there to make a play, Brandon. Does play with a chip on his shoulder, but get this, and this just goes back to my days as a guy covering high schools in a big metro area. Rakestraw was the Defensive Player of the Year for the Dallas metropolitan area, off of a Duncanville team that played for it all but did not win it all. They actually lost to North Shore, another school there we remember from Zachary Evans is covering his recruitment.
A short-handed North Shore, if I remember correctly.
Short-handed North Shore, that's correct.
Something tells me that was a storyline in that game, yes.
So, but Rakestraw, and you would think, okay, certainly, if you're going to give a corner who's not highly rated your defensive Metro Player of the Year honor, he must have had 100 tackles and 9 interceptions. Brandon, he had 1 interception on the year because he was very rarely targeted, and he shut down all those guys. I mean, the ultimate player, you want to talk about his senior year, you want to talk about your DNA as your film, that's Enos Rakestraw Jr. He actually wants to be a journalist. Eventually become a broadcast analyst on one of those talking heads on all the college and NFL programs. But giving Georgia that last official visit, got the film, went up against the top dudes. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba told him that, man, you ought to come and play with me at Ohio State. You're good enough. Ohio State didn't have any more room in their class for their defensive backs, but Enos Rakestraw Jr., you see a lot of film there, the length, the ability to go get the ball. Number 1 on the remaining top targets list for us as of this time.
How about some other names that are still on that list?
Number 2, I think you got to go with Dejon Edwards. Okay. Edwards told me this week that Georgia's getting an official visit on January the 24th. Florida State is going to get an official visit on January the 31st. Heard this name for the longest time in this cycle. He's kind of flowed in and out and kind of ebbed and flowed a little bit with other names. A lot of other higher echelon running backs.
Those are the only 2 schools he's considering at the time?
I do feel. I think he's actually going to try and take an official visit this weekend to Arkansas, Brandon.
Okay.
Of all places.
Well, there you go, yeah.
Of all places. Probably somebody sat in a recruiting room or heard some recruiting intel on that guy. But we said this early in the month on last week's Before the Hedges. You want to talk about a player that kind of, to me, looks like a Noshawn Marino type. That's who I would call maybe DeAndre Swift with a lot of those skills, but without that home run gear. I think Dejon Edwards would be that guy. I do feel he's about 5'11", about 205. Look at the way he has quick cuts. He's very advanced in the passing game, pass protection, also catching the ball. Look at that effort run there for that determination.
Yeah.
Brandon, I know you wouldn't mind another running back in this class. And I also know you wouldn't mind another Peach State product in this class as well.
Yeah, certainly Colquitt County is one of the premier programs in the state. He's playing tough competition each and every Friday night. So I think there's obviously a lot to like about Dejon Edwards. Admittedly, our attention, certainly mine, has been focused in on some of these other names. Those are now gone. Georgia kind of turning its attention here to Edwards. But that doesn't mean that Edwards is not a very good player in his own right.
Yeah, if you want to this is what I feel to be true. If you want to talk about a player that Dell McGee, the ace running backs recruiter for Georgia, has recruited longer and with it the bulk of the time more intensity than any other player in the 2020 class from the state of Georgia. A lot of names we could talk about there. We could talk about Bigsby, we could talk about Gibbs, but Georgia goes back a long way with Dejon Edwards. And Georgia has consistently recruited him hard. Georgia even came in for an in-home visit during December. Look at him break away on that play right there. He's only rated around the top 17, 18 running backs in the country, but there's a clear set of skills he has right there, Brandon, which I feel Georgia doesn't have a back quite like that in that offense right now.
Joel Moody referencing the MC Hammer era saying, too legit to call quit. I don't know that I can accept that as a comment or not. Brian K. Whitehead says that he doesn't think people give Edwards enough credit. So there you have some folks kind of weighing in on the Dejon Edwards situation.
Brandon, if I give you a magic wand and you can wave the name in one class immediately into your 2020 board for Georgia, who would it be?
Are the names that are still out there?
The names that are still out there.
Even though you
don't go Jordan Birch on me, man.
I'm fine. However Georgia chooses to fill these spots, I'm sort of fine with.
You would be. I'm sure you would feel enthused if Dejon Edwards
just keep telling me every single day these two offensive linemen are coming in. I'm sort of fine with whatever else. Just keep saying it. You got people trying to mess with Cedric Von Prine on Twitter this week. Just keep saying it. Just keep saying it. Broderick and Cedric are going to be signing eventually, and as long as those two ink up here coming up pretty soon, then pretty much anything else is fine.
The rest of the class would be gravy in your mind, correct?
Yeah, for the most part. That is indeed the case. Anybody else you want to tell us about?
Yeah, let's go through the list really fast.
We got a list still.
There are still 2020 targets. Number 3, Alex Huntley. Remember, South Carolina commit.
Is he dropping? Was he higher last week?
He was. He's dropped a little bit. We've moved 2 names above him.
Wow.
He's going to give Georgia an official visit. Georgia was still his number 2. Number 4 on the list, we're going to go DJ Lundy. Remember him? I think a lot of that.
Thrilla from Ocilla, he's been called.
I think that's a great nickname, by the way. I think a lot of.
I think that's actually stealing from Jermaine Jones, the former basketball star, who was the Thrilla from Camilla, I believe.
Correct.
I think I'm right about that.
Camilla was also James Jackson, I believe.
Was it really? Former quarterback?
Former Georgia quarterback, number 14,
How about
James
that?
Jackson. DJ Lundy, he's a wrestler state champion. He's a football state champion. Had some epic battles with Trezman Marshall. I think Georgia's looking at him as an inside linebacker. I don't know with names like, Monty Rice coming back, whether Georgia has a definite got-to-sign need for an inside linebacker in this class. Number 5, continuing on the list, Rashad Battle's a new name,
Okay.
Brandon. This is a cornerback who will be a safety if he chooses Georgia out of Creekview. Remember that program, the one that produced?
Yeah, for sure.
The one that produced Eric Berry out of Fairburn. Creekside. He's a guy that 6'2", about 170. Definitely, there's an in-state pull there as well. Georgia's going to get an official visit from this young man, another 3-star. You want to talk about late? There's a little bit of synergy with maybe an Eric Stokes here in terms of a guy that comes in late.
Yeah.
It's a 3-star.
Good comparison.
That has a lot of juice late in the game. He has a very strong senior film, and we've talked about that earlier in the program, how Kirby Smart's going to value that late senior film. And when you see what this young man can do on both sides of the ball, he's got size, he's got ability. He will come up and strike you. Physicality won't be an issue. And that could that would be a very late type add to Georgia's class.
It's a fun name.
You want to go under the radar with a young man named Battle to put back in the Georgia secondary. I think a lot of folks would like that.
Those uniforms are also sharp as well. Jacob O'Neill, going back to the subject of Trey Lundy from before, says that he thinks that Lundy's a real beast. This is one of those guys, and when it comes to Lundy, there's one of those things of, hey, when you make a name for yourself over the course of a run, state playoffs, when you do some things like that, there ought to be a reward for playing well. You said this about Enos Rakestraw, what he did this season in Texas. If you step up and play well and really put it out there as a senior, you ought to get some awards for that. You ought to get some big-time attention from programs like Georgia. That is the way it should work, I believe.
And he's a guy that, I could see him if he doesn't end up in Georgia. Let's say he goes to Vanderbilt, one of the schools that he's favoring as well right now. I think West Virginia is in his final group as well. But that's a guy that I could see going off to a Vanderbilt or West Virginia and putting up kind of those like Zach Stacy type seasons where he becomes one of the better running backs in any conference he shows up. A reminder, with Lundy, though, Georgia is recruiting him as an inside linebacker.
Yeah, so that is certainly something to think about. GB2 says Georgia signs one more 4-star for 2020, could give number 1 class in that 24/7 ranking. So folks still crunching these class numbers in terms of how this all shakes out with the class of 2020.
How much does that matter to you?
It's fun for me. I mean, honestly, whether you're like, as long as you're like north of like 300 points, whether you're like 1 or 2 or whatever, you've essentially done the job you need to do for that year. But I've told you this before. I like the prestige that comes from being the number 1 ranking, even though the Georgia's one time being at number 1 for the class of 2018 hasn't exactly paid a ton of dividends thus far. It is fun to be number 1 if you can be. It's fun.
I think it'd be funny if Georgia fans were sleeping on the fact that they could potentially be right there for the number 1 class already, especially when those re-ranks start happening. I would imagine Arian Smith is going to get a big jump. Jalen Carter might get a big jump to 5-star status. Tate Ratledge is always going to be knocking there right on the door, but you have other names like an Enos Rakestraw is going to immediately pop as a mid 4-star, I think, when all the final things are done on his recruiting. You have Cedric Von Prawn Granger. I think he's going to guy that's going to bump from the number 105 player, maybe the number 80, 85 type player as well. And then Broderick Jones, I think, will stay quite where he's at in the top 15 players in the country. Georgia could get a couple re-ranks that might push things ever closer there as well.
Yeah, that's a good thing to think about there as well. It's Before the Hedges presented by Kroger. A look today at the top targets for Georgia in the class of 2021. Some names still out there for the class of 2020. Got a chance to hear from Keeley Ringo a little earlier as well. So a really fun edition of our program thus far, and it's about to get even more fun because each week Jeff shares a weekly 6-pack. Some trivia questions designed to stump us and trip us up here, and another example of that here today. What are y'all making fun of?
I was just saying we had a couple more names on it. We had a couple.
Well, how am I supposed to know that? All right, let's see a few more names that are still out here for the class of 2020. I mean, Georgia's only got like 3 spots. How are we going to have 15 names?
So let's finish up real fast. Avante Williams, you know him. He doesn't know where he's going to go. 1 week it's Georgia.
Is he visiting Georgia?
That's currently slated for the 31st. I will wonder if that actually ever happens. Marcus Henderson is a guy. He's a guard. A lot of people are writing his name as a potential tackle in this class. He's a guard. He was an Under Armour All-American. Jordan Birch, he's just there just so Brandon can have one more 5-star to look at.
Because you have to have an even number of names to consider there.
And
Brandon, so there you go.
That's all of our top targets.
Well, there you go. That's kind of fun. So, yeah, listen, I am curious to see how this plays out. I'm curious to see how many more guys Georgia signs, and we'll kind of see how the Dogs choose to fill that out for the class of 2020. All right, we ready to do top target? We ready to do the weekly 6-pack. So you've got me all flummoxed now. You ready to do the weekly 6-pack and do some trivia questions?
I am. I will note, though, if you have your Before the Hedges bingo card about all the phrases we might possibly muster, you've got flummox now as a square, and you can also check off the Maleficent square as well.
Yeah.
Never thought I'd hear those
Maleficent's a hard word for me to pronounce. I'm still not quite sure I'm saying the movie name correctly. It's Angelina Jolie. Plays the witch, I believe. Is it Maleficent? Is that how you say it?
I think it's Maleficent. Please correct us. I got 1,900 high school names to memorize.
I also had Sweeshmellow show up today. I'm not even sure what that even is. But you can find it at your local Kroger.
6-pack, Brandon. Let's crack it
question number 1.
Question number
What's
1.
What's the theme today, by the way?
The theme is Georgia recruiting.
All right.
Georgia has acquired the rep for signing the number 1 overall prospect from states other than Georgia. They haven't signed one from the state of Georgia yet under Kirby Smart.
Enough.
What is that count now up to, Brandon? I'm spacing you out a little bit here, so you don't really know what to do.
All right.
8, 11, 13, 17, or 50. I thought you would really
Thank you. Yeah, there's no way I'll get this. So let me try to do this kind of fast. You got Rhode Island, Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina. I'm not going to get them all. Not even close. 8, 11, 13. Boy, double digits seems like a lot. Although you do have Illinois. I left that one out earlier.
Don't forget Tennessee.
Yeah, good point. I'm going to say it's 8. Just double digits seems like a lot. Maybe I'm just doomed to get this one wrong. But John Tracy says it's D, 17. Surely it's not that high. As I said before, I won't ever remember all of these, although I probably should. I'm going to stick with 8. I'm going to stick with A8. Although Michael Hoffman says B, Bob Garrison says B. Maybe I should have said 11. James Fulgham feeling more confident saying C, 13. I'm going to stay with my A8.
Sooner or later, we're going to get our crack graphics team to put us an illustration of the United States.
Yeah.
And when Georgia has signed a player from that state, we'll put a big G and a red and black over that state.
We do. The other day, we were kind of moving things around for our new studio. I found this big green screen thing, like the Weather Channel and stuff like that uses. So eventually, maybe we can do that.
could sit there and see how the global, or at least the regional, statewide, country, national domination for Georgia is looking like.
Tim Strickland mentions Pennsylvania. I guess I forgot to mention that a little earlier.
Forgot DeAndre Swift there as well, sir. Did you mention Rhode Island and Xavier
I said
Truss?
Rhode Island.
Florida and Nolan Smith?
Are we counting him as a Florida? All right, I'll change my answer and I'll say B11 then.
B11. Survey says, Connor, let him know what he's got. Brandon, it's 13.
13.
Keeley Ringo became the 13th prospect to sign with Georgia. You got to remember Nevada as well. Darnell
I
Washington.
said Nevada, yeah.
That signed with Georgia, who rated as the number one prospect in their state. So 13.
13. Pretty impressive work by Georgia. Kind of a weird irony, I guess, just given how little of that seems to have happened within the Peach State. Listen, good players are good players. Just interesting that Georgia has spread the wealth around so much of the country and guys having that distinction of being the top player from that state. Pretty interesting stuff.
Interesting to think about, to kind of tie into the top of our program a little bit. Currently, should Georgia claim the commitment of Brock Vandegrift at any point in the 2021 cycle, currently the number one player for the state of Georgia. So maybe he has to wait until 2021 to claim and eventually a signee from the number one player from the state of Georgia.
By the way, Swan Nicholson, Kevin Lee, good job to y'all for getting the answer right on Facebook a moment ago.
Good job.
How about question number 2?
Number 2, Brandon. Another one of these, trivia type things. Keeley Ringo was the number one corner.
Yeah.
How many times has Georgia now signed a prospect who was rated as the number one overall prospect at their position?
So cornerback, running back, would Nada have been the number one tight end in 2016?
He was.
Let's say that.
Rare 5-star tight end.
Obviously, we're counting tackles and guards as separate positions, I'm sure.
Separate positions, yeah. Jamari Salyer would be the number one guard.
Yeah. All right, let's say B9 on this.
B9. Let's see what Facebook. You get Facebook Nation. I'll take care of Dog Nation. Devon Glenn has Wilson as the number one offensive tackle. That was not correct.
Keith Mangus saying C. Chris Slim White saying D. Philip Jordan Wells giving us a B. What did I say? B9. I'm gonna stay with that. Johnny Starrett saying C11. I'm gonna say it's. Oh, I guess you gotta count inside linebackers, outside linebackers. Once again, I'm gonna talk myself into saying something a little higher. I'll go C11. I'll go C11.
Let's look at that. Rob D agrees with you. John Adams.
Which one? The first answer I gave or the second answer I've given?
It's funny. John Adams says there's some states we don't want their number one overall player.
That's probably true as well.
John Adams says he agrees with you on number 9. Let's look at that board one more time. Let Facebook get your responses in there as well, but also YouTube as well. Devon Glenn has a retracted answer and the sad emoji because he's maybe didn't have the right one. A lot of Alabama fans on our Dog Nation YouTube feed, it sounds like.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and for the risk of efficiency's sake and moving along in our program, Brandon, the correct answer, your second instinct was right there.
Okay, good.
11.
Good, yeah. When you start thinking about some of those, positions within the position groups, outside, inside linebackers, things like that, that's really pretty amazing. Really pretty amazing.
They can certainly recruit in Athens, Georgia.
There, no doubt about that, for sure.
Number 3, now we shift away from general trivia with a little bit here with maybe position, player, little players in the know, names in the know. Number 3 on our 6-pack, Brandon. Which one of these elements is true? Usually not true.
Yeah.
One of these elements is true about the 2020 signing
so
class.
most of these are wrong except one's going to be true.
Has 7 defensive players out of the current 23-man class. B, 35% of the class will either throw or catch the ball.
Okay.
There are only 5 members of the class from the state of Georgia.
Uh-huh.
D, there are 15 All-Americans in the class. Or E, all of the above are actually true.
Seems like should be more than 7 defenders, just given the fact that it seems like about 3/4 of the roster are defensive players for Georgia these days. But 5 from the state of Georgia. I think my brain's just fried. I'm not really remembering any of this stuff too well. There've got to be more than 7 defensive players in this 23-person class. Got to be more. Although they didn't sign a ton of linebackers, maybe that's not true. Yeah. I'll change it and say there are fewer than 5 people from Georgia in this class.
Let me see what Facebook has to see. You get Facebook. Brandon, you got a great work. We appreciate it. From
Oh,
SEC
thank you,
Dog.
SEC Dog. I appreciate that. That's what nice of you to say, SEC. A lot of E's in here that they're all actually true. Maybe they are. 5 from Georgia? I should probably just be able to rattle them all off. I think my brain's just fried.
Think you can go 5 from Georgia right now? Let me spot you 2, okay?
Let's just.
No, okay. Let's go. The correct answer here is actually all the above are true. Every one of those statements are true.
Fantastic.
35% is either going to throw or catch the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Only 7 defensive players from the defensive side of the ball, and then 15 All-Americans, but only 5 current Bulldogs from the state of Georgia.
Fantastic. That's pretty interesting.
Number 4. I think you're going to see something about Jamie Newman here, Brandon.
All right.
Not that I think
It's a little hodgepodge of questions this week.
For Jamie Newman, which is not true about the new Georgia quarterback. Not true. Threw 4 passes in his first 2 years at Wake Forest and finally got on the field due to an injury.
Okay.
B, never had a 300-yard passing day against a Power 5 team.
Okay.
C, had a 1-1 record against ranked teams.
Okay.
D, works for the same quarterback trainer who has helped to develop Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence. Or E, had 5 100-yard rushing games at Wake Forest. Which one of these is not true about Georgia's new dual threat import at quarterback?
I'm going to say that, 300 yards is actually a pretty prolific passing day. So, there are going to be a lot of guys that haven't had 300-yard passing games. I'm going to say that he threw more than 4 passes in his first 2 years at Wake Forest. Finally getting on the field due to an injury, that may have been true. I'm going to say he threw more than 4 passes in his first 2 years.
John Tracy's got a D. Big General 22GZ has E.
Bob Garrison says B. Frank Crowder, Philip Jordan Wells say E.
Georgia on My Mind says B. SEC Dog, he gives you some praise, and then he comes with a hard take. He says E, because Newman only ran for 600 yards all year.
Okay.
He knows his Jamie Newman rushing stats there.
Yeah, good stuff.
You know what, SEC Dog, you were so on top of it right there. I'm just going to immediately declare your answer right. That's the one that's inaccurate. He only had 200-yard rushing games last year for the Demon Deacons. A lot of 70, 75, 85-yard games.
Very impressive. Very impressive young man. Mixed bag of results for anybody that's played quarterback like he has for a team like Wake Forest. But on the high end performances were really pretty impressive.
I read somewhere when you take away the yards that he lost for being sacked, because that's how quarterback rushing totals are garnered.
Good point.
He was over 700 yards rushing.
That's very interesting.
Give me an over and under right now on Newman. If Newman becomes the Georgia quarterback, wins the job, plays out the season, what's the number? What's the over-under number there for rushing yards for Jamie Newman?
I don't think it will anywhere near 500.
You think the number to start with, an over-under bet, would be around 500, right?
No, I would put the over-under at lower than that and probably take the under.
What about touchdown rushes? Would you love to see something like 7, 8 there?
Oh, yeah, it'd be awesome. Yeah, I'd love to see a quarterback used in the running game in a short yardage situation. I would.
Would 6 be the number, or is that too high a number for the over-under there for Newman?
Yeah, 6 is probably fine for me. I think, listen, when it comes to Georgia, 6 touchdowns is just a lot for any player. Georgia's not exactly just piling touchdowns on one top of the other. So if he were to have 6 rushing touchdowns at Georgia, then that's probably a pretty smashing level of success for him. So, yeah, I would expect while he's going to show his athleticism at Georgia, I don't think, at least in my mind, I don't think it's likely he runs for anywhere near 500 yards for Georgia. I just don't think that's likely to be the case.
So, Brandon, I'm going to, how you say, good job with that thought you had right there, because immediately when you said that's a lot of touchdowns for anybody at Georgia, DeAndre Swift, of all folks, only had 7 rushing touchdowns last year for Georgia.
Georgia's just, unfortunately, and I hate to be the one to say this, they're just not really piling on touchdowns for really anybody. But that could all change.
That could all change.
Just as quick as that.
Quick as that. Next one, number 5, Brandon. If we just spoke about Jamie Newman, who do you think we're talking about with this question?
How about Trey McKitty, the new transfer tight end via Florida State?
Which one of these is true about McKitty? Ready for this one? Which one of these is true? Former high school teammate of Nolan Smith at IMG Academy.
He was at IMG. Was at the same time. I guess I'll try to think about that.
B, was rated as a top 10 tight end coming out of high school.
That may not be true.
C, caught 2 touchdowns against Clemson as a junior in 2018.
Did FSU score twice against Clemson in 2018?
D, criminology major who is working towards his pilot's license.
feel like we talked about this, so I feel like I know that. I think maybe at some point in time we talked about this. So I think those are both right, that he flies a plane and that he's a criminology major. He was a 3-star tight end. Is that good enough to make top 10 status for that position? 2 touchdowns against Clemson seems like an awful lot. He only scored 2 all year in 2018. Were they both against Clemson? Let me say that's probably not true, that at some point in time he scored touchdowns against someone other than Clemson. Let me say that be the case in 2018. He did score twice that year, but I don't believe they both came against Clemson just because I have a hard time seeing Florida State scoring twice against the Tigers.
So what we're looking for there, Brendan, remember to reset the question, is which one of these is true?
Is true.
Is true.
Oh. Well, then he is a criminology major and a pilot. That
Pilot's
is true.
license.
Yeah.
Already got 23 hours of
So
flight
his
time.
only 2 touchdowns all year long came against Clemson. That's pretty interesting. No,
that's not true.
Yeah, that's not true.
That's not true.
I apologize. I'm telling you, I'm just tired. Let's.
He's ready to watch some Maleficent, right? And play some Jenga.
So pretty interesting.
Number 6, we're going to come back to Keeley Ringo here. Which one of these Georgia Bulldogs had a higher all-time 24/7 sports composite rating than Keeley Ringo?
All right.
I want to make sure the question's worded correctly. I was a little brisk with that description.
No
but
worries.
through that, this is what I want you guys to germinate.
Uh-huh.
He is higher rated than every one of these names here on this list except for one guy.
That person is probably. Ooh, that's a good question. Between Tyson Campbell, Jacob Eason, Jamari Salyer, Isaiah Crowell, or Zamir White. Is it Jamari Salyer?
You're sticking with Jamari Salyer. Let's
Yeah.
see what we got.
Santiago DRN says Isaiah Crowell.
First of all, Brandon, I'm going to tell you, I didn't know you had your Dog Nation YouTube follower account up here, but you've got a YouTube Court TV trademark account that follows Dog Nation that's watching our program right now.
Well, that's nice.
They weigh in with D. Noah Mathis has a D. Stephen Wainwright, a good Dog Nation program friend, has a C. Rob D has B.
Eric Smith says Crowell was the highest rated 5-star.
That's not accurate. Eric, actually, you got to go higher names, lots of higher names for Georgia. Nolan was higher rated, but his name's not on this list. Justin Fields, his name's on this list. Trenton Thompson's name's on this list. A.J. Green is not on this list. These guys are all more highly rated than Keeley Ringo, but the point I'm trying to make is Jacob Eason. That's the only one on that list that Keeley Ringo.
Former Gatorade Player of the Year.
Eason ranks as the 5th highest Georgia recruit ratings-wise of all time. That's off the 24/7 Sports Composite all-time rankings. Mr. Ringo, Brandon, number 8 with a bullet.
Very impressive. Certainly a very impressive addition for Georgia. One of those guys that I could definitely see as a big-time player for the Dogs very early in his career, and that recruiting ranking certainly gives you a hint at that. How about number 6?
I think that was number 6.
All right, well, there you go. Quite a spirited edition of our weekly six-pack. Jeff stumping us some trivia questions. Some weeks it's a little easier to stump us than others. And for my case this week, probably easier than normal. Well, let's do this. Let's put 5 minutes on the clock here on the way out the door. We'll get ready to take a few of your comments on anything discussed from today's program and just kind of give you a chance to ask Jeff whatever you want to from a recruiting standpoint. You can certainly do that. And I guess, Jeff, I'll give folks a chance to kind of get their recruiting questions coming in here. For you, in the final stages of the 2020 class, what is the number one storyline? Not necessarily name to know, but storyline worth paying attention to. And you can broaden this out beyond Georgia if you want to.
I think the number one storyline is, for me, having to play firefighter a lot. When I mean firefighter is constantly telling folks that I think Cedric Von Granger and Broderick Jones are still going to be steadfast commitments and eventual signees in the class. I think that's the storyline that I think if you're getting down in the Dog Nation forum, I feel like folks want to know that every other day or so, or every 2 days when they read something. Got an interesting story on Cedric Von Granger I need to put up, which will hopefully add a little bit more of the clarity about why I feel the way I do about SVPG. Josh Bosch has a question. Josh, thanks for your question. He wants to know who's the leader for Enos Rakestraw right now.
Okay.
First of all, Enos, you remember that Dukes of Hazzard? Enos?
Do I remember? I saw every episode 57 times. There's nothing about Dukes of Hazzard that I don't remember.
You were watching it because of the white Jeep with the white Jeep all the time,
There were
right?
a number of reasons I probably watched the Dukes of Hazzard. Although I believe Enos from the Dukes of Hazzard was spelled different than Enos Rakestraw is.
Correctly, but when you start thinking about the names, it's just funny in this class you have an Enos to talk about.
That's true.
E-N-N-I-S, not E-N-O-S, but he wants to know leaders. Folks, I don't even think Enos knows his leaders. He's going to have to take these visits. He hasn't stepped foot on any of these campuses. Alabama was his dream school. He told me that, man, if Alabama offers, if Nick Saban says, come to my campus and check out my program, he said he's going to have to do it. I think it's interesting how Georgia's recruiting him. They're not recruiting him just to fill out a piece or fill out depth. He told me the way Georgia pitched things to him was they said, we're trying to win a national championship. We're getting guys. We're trying to find guys that are dogs, that can play, can get time right away, and we think you're one of those guys or we wouldn't be talking to you this late in the game. I don't think he has a leader, but he does have some loyalty towards Missouri. Ultimately, my thought here is he's going to choose between Georgia and Alabama.
Tim Statham wants to know who we'd like to see fill that last coaching spot for Georgia. I am very clear about this. I wanted to be someone who can kind of upgrade the offensive identity of UGA. And I don't need for it to be a famous name. And I think of Todd Monken, who's been kind of kicked around in the rumor mill as of late as being a somewhat famous name because he's worked in the NFL. If it's a big name like that, that's great. But I think a lesser name, someone who could work underneath James Coley, could potentially be good too. I just think that Georgia can't miss this opportunity just to bring in a freshened approach to what happens offensively. I think it's pretty clear that Georgia has two very different recruiting brands right now. Defensively, the Dogs can get anybody they want. Offensively, that's not necessarily always the case. I think what you do in terms of reimagining yourself offensively can certainly change that for the class of 2021 and moving forward.
Yeah, I think context is important, but there's an illusion or at least an image here that Georgia's defensive players all came back because they think the coaching staff can make them better. And that's a unit they want to play on one more season, maybe to maximize their draft stock. Yet on the offensive side of the ball, it seems like everybody's going pro because they feel like it's time for them to take their talents to the NFL. Maybe they don't feel like they can continue to get developed. Maybe they feel like they're already at that stage. I think the offensive hire needs to be a guy that can continue to upscale what Georgia's doing with the receiver, the tight end position, with the influence of Matt Luke and the concepts he's acquired over his years from being in the coaching room and on the same staff with Rich Rodriguez for his last year at Ole Miss, or working with David Cutcliffe. I think there's a lot of new offensive concepts and principles that are coming into the Georgia room, and I think they need to add another guy to that gumbo, so to speak, to add a little bit more spice offensively. One question I feel like I have to answer a lot, and I don't really know where it comes from, is I think I see a couple questions here about McKinley Jackson.
Yeah.
First of all, folks, that's a name that's just wedged in people's brains. I mean, we talked about it earlier, and it was like, yeah, there's a little bit of Matt Luke stuff there, but Georgia was on the outside looking in between Texas A&M and Alabama and Ole Miss and LSU with that guy. And he even told us point blank period at the All-American game that he wasn't even sure he's going to give Georgia an official. I think he's rattled off his final officials now, and Georgia's not getting an official. I think McKinley Jackson is a guy that if you want to – what's your term, Brandon? I'll let you say it on the program.
Tag the toe.
Toe tag a guy.
Yeah.
That recruitment, I think, never really got out of the microwave.
And to be clear, we're toe tagging the story, not the person, just to be clear.
Yeah, it's the recruitment or the potential chances of McKinley Jackson becoming a Bulldog are definitely, I think, mothballed because he's not even giving Georgia an official visit. I think Huntley would probably be the more likely defensive line option. For me, just to condense a thought here.
Too late.
It feels, condense a new thought right here. I love the way you do that though. The subtle Brandon coming in there right now. I was so nice to him during the six pack as he looked like he was somebody that works with crayons for a living. But anyway, I'm going to condense this thought. I think Georgia's remaining 3 or 4 names for 2 or 3 slots to me looks like Edwards, Rakestraw, and then maybe the Battle Kid, and along with Huntley.
That'd be fun. Joel Moody, we'll make this our last one, says freshman most likely to start game 1. Whew. Is it Broderick Jones or Keeley Ringo?
Jared Zirkle.
Well, there you go.
But I would say, that's a good one.
I think the Jones has got to be considered a likely starter. Easier to do that at offensive tackle right now than it would be a quarterback. That's just a deeper position for Georgia all the way around.
Yeah, Georgia doesn't have a lot of tackles either that can come in. If you would have told me Broderick Jones was an enrollee in January, then I think he would have had enough time and reps and everything to project as being a right tackle or a left tackle starter for Georgia. I would say right now that I would still lean towards Jones.
So we'll obviously follow that and see where it goes. Spring practice will be here before you know it, by the way. And what else will be here before you know it? January, and a whole bunch of fun stuff going on. A chance for you to make some really fun New Year's resolutions. And some of you think about healthy eating habits. Kroger's got you covered there. You can save over $100 with 5 times the digital coupon event on natural and organics products. All you need to do is go to Kroger.com and start saving by loading the digital coupons to your Kroger Shoppers card. So check that out at a Kroger close to you. Jeff Sintel, great stuff here today. Make sure you read more of Jeff at the forum at forum.dognation.com or every day at the site at dognation.com. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for Dog Nation Daily. Y'all have a great day, and we'll see you also back here again next week at this same time for Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. Have a great day, everybody.
For more Dog Nation videos, check out youtube.com/DogNation.